Okay, I am back with In Defense of Hellstrom, the show and the comic, part deux. So, when I left off, I was right at the Hellstorm Marvel series that launched in 1993. And it was, I believe, Marvel's attempt to replicate the tone and vibe of the then very popular Vertigo line that DC was publishing of quirkier and supernatural and darker and weirder characters and concepts. And I was a huge fan of that line. So I was very gratified by this this Hellstorm. They called the series Hellstorm Prince of Lies. Now, like I said, he had acquired the name Hellstorm as a superhero pseudonym by Steve Englehart a couple years earlier in West Coast Avengers. So he decided to begin calling himself Daimon Hellstorm. He didn't have the superhero outfit. He didn't look like he used to either, exactly. I guess I showed you this cover, but this is more or less what he looked like in the early issues. So he's got the trident and the pentagram, the upside down. He still has red hair, but it's a lot redder. Still bare chested. Still has red pants or tights or whatever. I guess they're pants in the new incarnation. A mild, medium redesign here, which gets refined and improved as the series goes on, albeit still a little farther from the 70s one. So what the hell is Hellstorm about? I'm still missing a few issues, but I'm going to tell you about what I've read, not break down bit by bit. I'm just going to give you an overarching. So it starts out strong. Raphael Nieves is the writer. I used to know who he is, but I don't remember what he's done. Great Michael Baer doing the art, as I mentioned last video. And, idiosyncratic writing. Some of it's a bit on the nose and nudge, nudge, wink, wink with the humor, because a lot of it is attempting to have Daimon have very dark humor and kind of mock all of the conventions and stereotypes and tropes of superheroes and anything related to that. Anything that seems gauche or corny about his former incarnation, he's deconstructing and saying how stupid it was, and he kind of acts like an arrogant hipster. He's like too good for all that. I get it. I get it, but it's annoying at times because you've known people in real life like that. Can't believe I dressed like that. He's a hipster. Let's just face it. The good thing about the Hellstorm series is they don't take that on as the single defining expression of his personality like they could have, or he would have worn thin for me pretty quick. He goes through a few evolutionary changes, mostly dictated by the writers, but the flow is very smooth from writer to writer. Neves and Baer do the first few issues, and then Neves segues, and he works with Len Kaminsky on an issue, and segues into Len Kaminsky being the head writer for a number of issues. Len Kaminsky was a vast improvement. Just he toned down some of these. There was a quirky kind of humor, but at times the sarcastic, witty things, which do find themselves into the Hellstrom show. And you're going to say, of course, it's Marvel, but regardless, it was in this comic book series, so it's an adaptation. Neves could be good, and he could be as an actual prose writer or a dialogue writer, but his plots are great because he kind of builds a mystery over the first three issues. Like, what the hell? What the hell is wrong with Daimon Hellstrom? Why is he calling himself Hellstorm? Why is he living in San Francisco? Well, we knew he was living in San Francisco with Patsy, his wife, and their attendant slash buddy slash former teammate Isaac Christians, aka the Gargoyle, a very long time core Defenders member and cast member. And that dynamic's great. taking those characters and then throwing them into this dark kind of cynical, almost absurdist at times milieu with higher stakes and just an overall adult tone. This is very much a Defender spin-off book, at least as it begins. Because not only do you have those three as characters, but you also have, in the first issue, the return of Serapha Timms from Daimon's old book. There was an issue of Defenders where it turned out there was a Daimon Hellstrom who took his place and married Serapha Timms and continued as the professor at Georgetown University. And Daimon was oblivious. He was out doing all these adventures with the Defenders and, trying to hook up with Hellcat and having angst with his father. So he comes back to visit and boom, this guy's taking his life. It turns out he is one of his father Satan's minor demons who sneaked out of hell during some horrid calamity. And he came to Earth and he, just kind of took the disguise of Daimon and then realized, Daimon's probably not coming back. And he met Serapha and, she's a Wiccan, she's a witch. She knew Daimon was part demonic anyway. So they fall in love and the demon is kind of redeemed and wow. And Daimon's like, my life is that empty that one of my father's nameless minions could take my life, my former life, and make more of it than I ever was able to. I'm paraphrasing, but only slightly. Jim DeMatteis wrote that. So that's a plot point. You thought, we'll never see them again. Well, issue 1, we do. We see them again, and Serapha is trying to get to this place called the Black School, which is now a new rising coven, I guess you could say, in San Francisco. Daimon Hellstrom is also kind of trying to get there. And finally, Gabriel Rossetti, the Devil Hunter that I've mentioned before, he is also trying to discover what it's about. Now, since his days in the Haunt of Horror, he's gone from a powerful exorcist to kind of a drunken failure. And he performs kind of faux exorcisms, which are really just kind of women paying him for exorcist rituals that have an erotic element. He doesn't fuck them, but they get off on them, apparently goth chicks and stuff. Kind of embarrassing. And he also writes a gossip column, which is about demonology and possessions, and some of it is his own experiences, and then also his research, but some he just makes up. And he constantly is drinking. So he's a shell of a man, but when he realizes that Daimon Hellstrom is around, and he's the son of Satan, it kind of renews his desire to somehow get good with God and fight what he considers his opposite number. So, Daimon's the protagonist of the book, but he's the villain, and Gabriel is the antagonist and the sort of hero, anti-hero. So why is this? How the hell did this mess turn out this way? So, Gabriel and Serapha infiltrate the Black School, and turns out Daimon Hellstrom is the leader, but it's not Daimon Hellstrom we've been talking about. It is that demon who took his life. But even though the demon had a nice, sweet life and everything, and was really kind of a good guy, Satan corrupted him, promised him power and respect he never had in hell before, and he was weak, and so he was still under the guise of Daimon Hellstrom, but now he was the head of the Black School. So the real Daimon Hellstrom attacks him and manages to defeat him, destroy him with the Hellfire Trident. So you're kind of at this point reading, you're like, how did he get his Hellfire Trident and his power back? What's up? No one's quite sure. So in issue 2, Doctor Strange pays him a visit at this strange decadent club he frequents called Hellstorm, and again, there's some kind of, a little on the nose, maybe elements that are almost like self-parody of those kind of scenes. A little dated. Vertigo pulled that kind of stuff off better in those kind of milieu, but still, the story is told, the story's interesting. Damon's, comments where he's dissing his past life and all this stuff and his past wardrobe, and yes, he's an insufferable goth. But he's also now once again the son of Satan with full power. And Doctor Strange doesn't realize why. And Strange mentions how a few months ago, this was off camera, Daimon was dying at the San Francisco mansion, and Patsy begged Stephen for help. And Stephen was just barely able, I guess, to keep him alive for a while. So another mystery. So issue 3, which I don't have, but I did read years ago. I do remember, Daimon comes home to his wife at the end of issue 2. Gargoyle's there, and Patsy's had her head shaved, and she's totally crazy. So in issue 3, we finally find out that he was dying, that Daimon did make a deal. Doctor Strange couldn't help, and Patsy made a deal with the devil to return the dark soul to Daimon, because that's why he was dying. He couldn't die being a divided self forever. It was just part of him. So you can, delete his dark soul and make him a superhero named Hellstorm and get him married and seem like a professor, a erudite dude, and just kind of finally happily married. You can do all these things that Shooter kind of pushed along and DeMatteis, but ultimately it's true. He says it, I am the son of Satan. That's not going to change. You can't just unweave all of that DNA and just leave the human DNA. It's just can't, down to the molecular level. That's just not how it works. The dark soul was kind of depicted as an entity, almost like a second spirit, when Daredevil and Daimon Hellstrom meet for the first time in Defenders. Daredevil can kind of make out his shape, and of course he had the kind of horny hair back then and the cloak, and he's holding the trident, and he hears 2 heartbeats, one calm and one like a beast. And with all that, Daredevil, mind you, this is Daredevil, thinks to himself, could it be? No, it's impossible. I think he meant Satan himself, but no, the next best thing. So, and Luke Cage meets with them too. Great dynamic with those 3. Then they go track down a racist group called the Sons of the Serpent that have captured the Defenders. The golden age of comics for me. I know it's the Bronze Age, but anyway. Well, so now you kind of revealed what happened, because when Patsy does this to save Damon's life and refuses him with the dark soul, she sees the true face of Satan, and she goes mad. Excuse me. It's kind of like an H.P. Lovecraft kind of deal. And Damon's taking care of her, but with the dark soul seems to be more dominant this time, and he's a lot more cynical, demonic. He's more of a bastard. He scoffs at his old life and attempts to be a hero and transcend what he is. But over time, this starts to change a little, because the next few issues, which I've only read bits and pieces of, the next 2 issues, point in the direction of where I'm at with issue number 5, which I read yesterday. And at this juncture, Daimon is squarely back on the track of opposing his father and his father's schemes. So his old mission has been restored, and he does help innocent people, and so he's not like a villain, like he seemed like he could be in the first 2 issues. Arrogant, yes, and give me a wide berth, Doctor Strange, and get thee behind me, Satan, couldn't resist. But you know, uh, he is a of a heroic band, an occult anti-hero. So he goes through several quests and he tries to save these souls from hell. And there's a couple of issues I'm missing, and I'm not sure what happened. Then there's a climactic issue to that storyline in which, in order to defeat the minions of hell, he has to let the dark soul take over his body completely, and he mutates into this really unattractive gentleman. I really don't like this art. Uh, the inside art was continuing to be pretty good. As Lynn Kaminsky was ascending as writer, Peter Gross, who'd done a bit of Vertigo work too, took over from there. And even Vertigo veteran Steve Pugh did a cover here, and this one. He had done Animal Man, Vertigo. Yes. So I've read up to, of my rereads, I've reread to number 14. So I haven't finished reading the whole series. But here's where things get interesting. Issue 11 tied up that initial storyline. Issue 12, which I just showed you, Steve Pugh cover, but inside the team is Leonardo Manco, who is an absolutely phenomenal artist, and Warren Ellis, his first Marvel Comics work. So let's investigate this issue real quick. The reason I'm doing this is because a lot of this is going to end up in the TV series. So we have Red Miracles. This is the day when there were still ads in all these comics. Trying to find some particularly Leonardo Manco's art is very influenced by Bill Sienkiewicz, I would say. I don't know if you can see that. This is the new character on Ingenuity Lee. Ellis wastes no time at all bringing in interesting new characters, and Manco wastes no time in showing how his trip to hell is taking its toll on Daimon. He is becoming more abrasive in personality, but he's also not showing him much. No, wrong page. There was Patsy there. Yes, this is what I was trying to find. So Daimon now is this guy, this handsome guy with long, full blonde red hair. And there's Isaac Christian's the Gargoyle. So he's more of a goth than ever. I mean, but this design works great. I mean, these two guys on the character seem more sure-footed than Raphael Neves was, and you know, it shows with the great work that they're doing, they were doing. So the next direction it's going to go in basically is the direction similar to a lot of Vertigo books of that period, like Sandman, like Preacher, where you have these battles between heaven and hell and all this kind of arcane mythology and occultism. It goes into that scale, and like those books, and what Vertigo allowed those writers, Marvel allows Ellis to just go crazy with his imagination. He was a British writer, is a British writer too, so he's kind of the second wave of those guys, like Garth Ennis was. This is back when Ellis was really, I know, he's very worshipped as a writer. This is back when he was great. I think he was great. Just jumping right in. He immediately changes the tone to a Vertigo book without changing any of the continuity or the flow or any of that. And starts introducing just an explosion of new ideas, in addition to continuing to expand on the core cast, you know, with Damon, Patsy, Isaac, and Gabriel. Though some of those will become less important as the series wanes. He introduces Jane Cutter. If I get this straight, she's like an assassin, and she's trying to stop this other assassin who's an angel from heaven who's more dangerous. So her character confused me because I've only read like the one issue story with her. I think this might be her introduction. Um, Here's a great scene with Damon and Patsy, Leonardo Manco art. And again, the writing has itched to another level, you know, and it's wild. She's insane. Playing in the men flesh garden. I was just playing Damon. Brought you back to steak and napalm because I loved you. I can see radio without mirrors. I do not love her army, plating with the shivering foil stamp. And Damon says, her monologue is wonderful. While I'm away, you shall transcribe it for me to review at my leisure. Thank you, Isaac. She says, a boy has never wept, nor dashed 1,000 kin. So, and then as he steps out, and we see this guy over here smoking. He started smoking. And he's got the trench coat now. So yeah, the writing, yeah, he's using like the automatic writing, kind of like Grant Morrison did in Doom Patrol for Patsy and her madness. And the smoking thing, he says in issue number 2, Doctor Strange is like, I don't recall you smoking. And he says, there's a Brit I know in our line of work who smokes quite heavily. Many hoped he would die. They did not get their wish and were not happy, including my father. So, John Constantine, crossover of sorts, you know, spiritual crossover. So I've not read this last one. There's some great covers here coming up by Brian Boland, T. Craig Russell, Christopher Collins. You know, this is really kind of where it's happening, by the way. And, you know, this and a spin-off series that Warren Ellis also does called Druid, which was a redefinition of the Dr. Druid character, Dr. Anthony Druid. It turns out his birth name was Anthony Ludgate. Also a really great series, only 4 issues. And I believe there's a volume now, which maybe I'll buy one day, of all 10 of these, 10 or 11 of these, because I have up to 21, and I can't remember if that's the last issue or 22 is, but these 10 or 11 issues of Hellstorm, and then also the 4 Druids in a Warren Ellis Hellstorm collection. So it's kind of like Warren Ellis, you know, doing Vertigo in this little tiny corner of the Marvel universe with these great these great artists, like especially Manco, who's just always loved his work. Always loved. He's very much like Dave McKean, a post-Sienkiewicz artist, and lots of lines and sloppy, but also very realistic features in the characters. The core, and some of you might have seen my art, and it's not as dark as his, dark as in dark, like blacks contrast, but he didn't directly influence me, but I was influenced around the same time he was coming out by the same people, and so you can see that in some of my work, especially now coming back. So Hellstorm went the way of all flesh, the comic book. And the less said about the next 20 years of just kind of, I don't know, mishandled, wrong-headed, contradictory appearances of Daimon Hellstrom and his attendant cast members. Yeah, the better. I wanted to say that Satana does appear in the Ellis run, and like I said, I haven't gotten to those issues where she's used more on camera, and she is alive again. So I'm going to continue with some occult listening as I take care of this. My first album was Black Mass by Lucifer, a 1970s electronic music album, instrumental album, which with satanic and magic themes, very eerie. Now I'm putting on a rock album, Coven, Blood on the Snow. So hopefully this won't be too loud. I'm going to try to speak louder so I won't get drowned out. Let me pause, and I'm going to turn the volume on that down. I am back. Attended to some matters and revved up to go and finish this thing. So, in the mid-2015s, the Netflix Marvel deal was putting out some really interesting adult-themed, toned Marvel properties and TV series. Of course, Daredevil, my very favorite, but also Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, one season of The Defenders, and finally The Punisher. So I believe in 2018, or was it 2019? The last of those aired. I guess it was 2019. I think the last one there was Jessica Jones season 3. And that was it. But there were some that were being considered to being developed, like Moon Knight, and also maybe some Mystic Supernatural ones. And at the time these were coming out, a friend of mine said, they really should do a Son of Satan series for Netflix. That would be dark like these. I mean, it's a horror line of horror characters. Of course, I thought it was a brilliant idea. I didn't think Marvel actually was going to do it. Well, it turns out Marvel, I think the seed, of that idea did start way back. It didn't even get as far as the Moon Knight discussions. Moon Knight now is about to debut on Disney Plus. I don't know what tone it's going to take on. But in any case, little did I know that they were developing a Son of Satan series that came out of that, because Marvel Television, which is under the aegis of Jeff Lieb, comic book writer, he was pushing things in that direction. And instead of on Netflix, though, he was going to debut them on Hulu, which Disney owned, and which was going to air Marvel series The Runaways, and maybe some others. Well, it was going to be Ghost Rider and Hellstrom. So the Ghost Rider thing fell apart. Hellstrom proceeded and went into filming, and as the filming was wrapping, the reorganization kind of took effect, filtered down. The reorganization meaning that Disney wanted all of their material, Marvel material, movies and TV, to appear exclusively on Disney Plus, so you'd have to pay them for it. And they wanted it family friendly at least as much as possible. Netflix and Marvel, that whole situation fell apart. Marvel did not want another company competing with them with their own characters and making money off their characters. So Netflix canceled the shows. I'd say both sides did the wrong thing, but at least I understand why Netflix did it, even though I was mad. So that was the end of that. So what was going to happen is Marvel Television had just finished Hellstorm. Is it going to air? Yes. Began airing last year on Hulu. Aired for one season, which was 10 episodes. And, by that time, there was no Marvel Television. Excuse me, I'm adjusting the light here just a little bit. And the other thing, it's too bright for me. Okay, a little more of a fleshy tone. I don't know, not much good contrast. I'll try to get this light. Sorry, I'm being very picky. I should pause this and do this. So, What does that mean? Well, that means that the last Marvel television project was going to be Hellstrom. So they went back and forth on this thing. First, it was known as Marvel's Hellstrom. Then, as the show, was given more freedom, storytelling wise, content wise, as the Netflix shows have been given, and the showrunner started pushing it more in that direction, Marvel kind of disowned it. I mean, I'm sure they're making money off it. There's no more Marvel's Hellstrom on it. In the opening credits, there's such and such production company in association with Marvel Television Studios, but Marvel doesn't appear anywhere else in the promotional materials or the show itself, or nothing. It's not really mentioned prominently at all. So that means, well, Marvel sees the writing on the wall with Disney Plus, and they're like going to distance itself from Hellstrom. And now, if Hellstrom had been a hit, they would have done the same thing. But let's face it, Daredevil was a huge hit, and they still did it to Daredevil. So, but if it had been a huge hit, at least more people would have been annoyed, like they are about Daredevil. Since it wasn't a hit, and it didn't, not only didn't expectations, didn't meet expectations, which I don't know what the expectations were, to be honest. No one cared. So Marvel taking its name off it delegitimized it for everybody who was hardcore MCU fans. Does it fit into the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe continuity? According to Figa himself, it does. He's been vague a couple of times, but then he's been fairly clear a couple of times that, yes, of the TV series, the non-Disney Plus TV series, Agent Carter is in the MCU. The first maybe 2 seasons of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and the rest are apocryphal, which is fine with me. And Cloak and Dagger is in. Netflix shows are in. And Hellstrom's in. But there's not going to be a crossover with Hellstrom. However, Hellstrom does make other Marvel references. They're sly and quick, but they kind of establish that more or less it's the same universe, which Figa has said. But the showrunner of Hellstrom said no. After they kind of started disowning us, we just went and did our own thing. It gave us more freedom. We didn't have to worry about the Marvel Universe. So, no, it's not. So, I'm going to believe Figa over that guy. I get why that guy's saying that, because he was trying to do a quality show, and he didn't want to be hidebound by and shackled to this operation that, to be fair, wasn't helping him, wasn't pushing his work or promoting his work after that had been the plan. So, after all that is said and done, let's address the show. So, like I said, it debuted in 2020, I guess. It ran for 10 episodes, 1 season. It's on Hulu. I've recently gotten into Hulu via a good friend, and binged the whole series in a week. Compared notes with some friends, Kimberly Jones, who had already seen the show. Kimberly Jones! And also Sean Lee Levin, who I inspired to watch, and he actually, he didn't finish before me, but he was in the lead for a while. So we had some interesting discussions about that. So what's the show about? How is it presented? How does it relate to the comics? Okay. It takes place in the present day, Portland, Oregon, which I thought was actually, I don't know if clever is the right word, but a good choice. Portland is like a hipster city. a major American city. A good contrast to the East Coast where the Marvel heroes are, like all the Netflix street heroes are in New York, you know. And before, Daimon was based in intermittently between, or that's not the right word, is it? Alternatively between Fire Lake, Massachusetts, and Georgetown University. So, let me pause this 1 second. I'll be right back. Okay, I've opted for now for slightly lighter presentation as the subject matter grows darker. So anyway, I thought Portland was fine, and he does teach. Daimon Hellstrom teaches at a university. Daimon Hellstrom is about 30. His sister is Satana Hellstrom, except in the show, she's given the diminutive Anna Hellstrom. And she's probably 3 years younger than him, like in the comics. Say he's 30, she's 27, though you could, fudge that a little in each direction if you wanted to. Just going by the flashbacks and references. They are not close. They don't speak anymore, and mainly her choice. She lives in San Francisco, which Daimon lived in Hellstorm. She runs an antiquities store with a friend. And, hold on. I'm going to make another click. I'm back. So, Daimon and his sister have not gotten along since their separation 20 years earlier. Essentially, their parents were Victoria Hellstrom, as in the comics. We don't learn her maiden name. In the comic books, it was Wingett. And the father, Mr. Hellstrom, who is, as they describe him, an abusive, powerful, mysterious serial killer, who basically abuses the family and then takes Anna away and goes on a cross-country trek, killing many, many people, abusing Anna, making her watch the murders, testing her ability to deal with pain and survive certain things, like he buries her alive, tries to set fire to her. What a charmer. And Daimon is raised by a woman named Dr. Louise Hasting at a place called St. Teresa's, which is ostensibly a church, but it also functions like a hospital and a mental institution and whatever. I just say this, whatever's convenient for the plot, they have a room for it, just to have the scene. But that makes sense in a way because her operation isn't strictly religious. It's not like a school. It's really revolves around the work of combating demons and exorcising them, defeating them, or trapping them in host bodies and neutralizing them by drugging them into permanent oblivion, keeping their bodies alive. A ghoulish process. There are different things of their whole operation that Daimon knows and doesn't know. Quite a lot of it he doesn't know. And there's some things Louise doesn't know. And her liaison to all this is a guy named Caretaker, real name Henry, and good name. And Caretaker ostensibly works with a group called the Blood, which has sworn vengeance against the demons. They want them, destroyed or at least captured the way they've been doing with neutralizing them. And they're pretty hardcore about it. And Esther is their leader, played by Deborah Van Valkenburg, who you may recall decades back as in The Warriors, which is also on the Ted Knight show in the 80s. That's where I first saw her. She's quite good in this and very tough and driven because her family was possessed and destroyed. So The problem is she lumps Daimon and Anna in with these demons. So why do you ask that? Is that their heritage? Well, like I said, one of the things, or didn't say yet, but would like to say, something that put me off from watching this show initially was I thought it would be a terrible adaptation. I didn't like them changing her name to Anna from Satana, but I got used to that. But I also did not like the fact, excuse me, that it's such they were the children of a mysterious serial killer. I thought, man, we've really peeled back from Satan, or even Marduk Curios, which was the secret name of Satan that Daimon Hellstrom learned during the Warren Ellis era, and was actually able to defeat him by knowing his real name. Well, Marvel was pretty sly about this, and I guess it was because they didn't want to go, we're going to have a show about Satan, but it is pretty much. In the ways that are important, it's derived right from the comic books. It's kind of sly and on the DL for the first few episodes, but it all becomes clear by the ending, especially the very last scene of the last episode. So, what was their father? Well, they said he was believed dead. As time goes on and Daimon does some exorcisms, especially this pesky guy named Magoth, demon named Magoth, who keeps possessing other characters later, he is given as someone to accompany him on his exorcisms. A really beautiful Hispanic woman named Gabriella Rossetti, a nun. So you're probably already thinking, what I didn't think of. Well, I knew her name was based on Gabriel Rossetti, the Devil Hunter. I didn't even think about the nun part. I guess I kind of did, but so yeah, she does end up following his arc closely to a point by the end of the series, which shocked me because it happens in shocking ways and not good for the character because she's a sweet person and her innocence is trampled upon, only very near the end. I tend to get invested in these characters. Let me say real quick, Louise Hasting is also a Marvel character from the series about the Darkhold that came out during the Midnight Suns wave of comics in the early 90s. They ran kind of concurrently with Hellstorm and such, but they weren't of the quality. They were still kind of the Marvel crazy frenetic style that was popular, but they did have some grounding and some interesting stories. The Darkhold book, a little more than most, and it was drawn by Richard Case, who was doing Doom Patrol at the time, and actually started doing Marvel work before he did Doom Patrol and Doctor Strange. So Louise Hastings, they've taken from that, and they've added the fact that she more or less raised Daimon from age 10 or whatever when Dad stole away Anna and left him with the mother. The character Caretaker is a riff on the character Caretaker from Ghost Rider, the Danny Ketch era of Ghost Rider comics. And he is depicted in the Nicolas Cage Ghost Rider movie by Sam Elliott. Now, he's a bit different in the show. But yeah, they've kind of rounded these guys up. There's also a father, Joshua Crow, who ends up getting possessed. He also is a character from the Hellstorm series. The vibe of the show is kind of in line with Hellstorm. Not as much action, not as much evil in Daimon. A little more like the 70s Daimon. A little more vulnerable, but very cynical, very irreverent towards religion. A lot of the cynical byplay and humor that is kind of there in Hellstorm, the comic books, is in the show, especially banter between Daimon and Satana, Anna. And basically the arc is that their mother, Victoria Hellstrom, after being abandoned, Daimon calls social services or whatever when she's going crazy, and turns out she's been possessed by a demon called Gathara, or Mother. And she's been possessed by this being for this whole 20 years, and she's been in a padded cell inside St. Teresa's. So yeah, they have everything equipped to deal with this. Like an all-purpose, one-stop, demon stopping operation. And Louise is a really maternal character to Daimon, and a very intelligent, very capable woman. She is starting to die of cancer. Turns out she used to have a romance with Henry, the caretaker. Is that kind of is a subplot that develops. Gabriella is with Daimon all the time, and she sees great good in him. And of course, initially it seems as though his concern is he's going to be like his father, in the sense that his father was a serial killer, so he might have some evil traits. After just a couple of episodes, finally they pretty much say, my father wasn't human. Someone else says he was a demon. And then later you find out he's one of the oldest and most powerful demons. And he probably can't be killed. And then he's controlling, they think he's controlling Magoth and Mother. So it turns out they're wrong, and that Mother herself is the main foe, and she is vacated from Victoria. And Magoth just keeps jumping bodies, and his brother Basar. Basar is her son. I don't know if Magoth is or not. So this is going to turn out to be a very messed up family tree here in a minute. So finally, there's a point where it seems like they've defeated Basar and Magoth and gotten Mother out of Victoria Hellstrom, and maybe things are going to look up a little. And Gabrielle is hopeful, and one obstacle though is the blood, because they have come. They torture Caretaker for information, and so he's not really down with them anymore. And then they also, attack Daimon and Satana. By this time, Satana hasn't been just visiting Daimon. She's going to stay there for a while, and their antagonistic relationship is starting to become a little less heated, a little bit more forgiveness creeping in, and her forgiveness of her mother is slowly starting to happen, who she hated her mother for many years. And Satana has different layers. She has a good friend named Chris Yen, played by Alain Yu, and he is her partner in the antiquities business. He eventually is marked by this mystical object that's like a skull with one eye and the middle like a cyclops. This is a weapon to use against Mother. And basically what it does is it marks him as a keeper, and the keepers were people who, basically, as I understand it, kept these mystical talisman to ward off people like Mother and Daimon's father. And so he can't be harmed by them. And of course, Chris is kind of like I almost want to say he's comedy relief, but not quite. He has very pithy humor. He's a young, gay Asian man, very into how he looks, his style, the most expensive of everything. And he's dating a black cop who becomes suspicious of everything that's going on around their business. Because basically the business is a front for Satana to go out and do what she did in the comic books, which is feed on wretched males and sustain herself, taking their lives. And so she's still sort of a semi-succubus. And there are always people that are really at the bottom of the barrel. Daimon doesn't really approve of this. Daimon has a stronger moral barometer. despite his very brusque and cynical side. He's trying not to let his power overwhelm him. He only uses the power he's inherited against the demons during the possessions. But he has hellfire too, just like in the comic books. And by the time the blood keep fucking with Daimon and Anna and the other characters, Daimon finally unleashes it and burns to ash a number of their members. And then proceeds to threaten to hang the rest of them. He's telekinetic. He can make things fly around the room. Of course, that whole fly around the room poltergeist thing. That's a convention that didn't really start with poltergeist per se, but it started with The Exorcist. Poltergeist obviously used it because that's what poltergeists do. And so people toss each other into walls with their mind all the time and throw objects at each other or stop objects being thrown at them. So Daimon and Satana both have that power, in addition to Satana's other weird power, where she'll suck their life force out of these cats. Daimon's other powers are like, yes, the soul fire, the hellfire, whatever you want to call it. And he does have on his chest a round occult symbol, which his father carved in his chest when he was 10. And he said, that was basically so you'd always remember, you'll always be my son. And it's not a pentagram, but it is kind of an almost pentagram. It's a cool looking symbol. And it does start to flame when his powers are being used, like in the comics. And the father did this with a knife, this magical knife he has, which he split into 2 pieces. And things go turn for the worse when Daimon. What essentially happens is, after Mother's cast out of Victoria, she's looking for a host. After defeating or after driving off the blood, Daimon and Gabrielle hole up at his house, I guess, and celebrate their victory, I guess, and his mother being free. And you've been sensing it for a few episodes, and while Damon's been exhibiting more and more of his demonic powers, she keeps telling him, you're not like your father. You are a good spirit. And, first you maybe think this is just her nun side. She hasn't taken her final vows yet. She's an initiate. But it becomes obvious. To me, I thought there's an attraction. Of course, he's very stoic and not good about showing his emotions. Another characteristic that was very well adapted from the comic books. And so there's an issue where they're talking and they have a drink and they kiss. And it's incredible. It's like passionate, and I was so happy. I was excited about, again, being the soap opera, doomed romance guy I am. I thoroughly enjoyed that. And then they're about to make love. And while he's in the shower, she is taken over by Mother. And then she takes this heart that she'd taken out of a bazaar, that she's taken out of his last host, sticks it in Damon's back and pushes it into him where it, merges with his internal organs, attaches itself to him parasitically. And then after that, there's a quick final shot of the bedroom, and she says you've got to make one more sacrifice. And there's a quick shot of the bedroom, a sideways shot, and you see Gabriella atop Daimon. They both have their shirts on, at least. That's all you can tell. But she's rocking back and forth, and he seems like he's digging it. And then that's it. So I'm like, what happened? So yeah, it makes clear in the following episodes. Yeah, they fucked. She either fucked Basar and Daimon, and he was cool with it, or she raped him. It didn't really matter, I guess, with demons. But she's raping her own son, and the son is planting the seed in her, but it's Gabriella and Daimon's body, so it's Daimon's seed going into Gabriella's womb. So Ostensibly, Gabrielle then is pregnant with Damon's child, but of course, it was a child engineered by mother and son, mother and Bazaar. And the idea is that Cathara's new host, because she leaves Gabriella, though kind of lingers on the periphery of her mind, and she is going to be reborn. She was flesh once, many millennia ago. A lot of these demons were, and now they have no bodies. That's why they're possessing all these, different humans forms. And so she wants to be reborn, and by this time, the Bazaar is really taken over Daimon. And for an episode or two, Daimon's really a bastard. He's pretty much Bazaar. He can't fight it. It's impossible to possess Daimon, but since they did this on a physical level, and that heart kind of clung to him and took over his body, he's essentially possessed. He's Bazaar. And poor Gabrielle Rossetti. She is held captive by them. It's only a matter of days. So to her, it seems months because she's drugged a bit, and each time she wakes up, she's more pregnant. There's actually one of these super accelerated pregnancies to get Cathara out into the world in her new form. And Gabriella is really tortured by all this. She can't escape. She sees Daimon with Bazaar in him and keeps imploring him to help her, to reach him, to get through to him because of the moment they shared and the love that's coming between them, starting to develop between them. He ain't having none of it, so he's like, no, I'm Bazaar, fuck you. And her torment just gets worse and worse up to the point where she gives birth to this child. And finally, Daimon is freed, and Gabrielle is rescued, but things are irrevocably fucked up. Because Henry and Christian and Satana, they all teamed up and Victoria, who decided to tag along and help them, and her mind is somewhat coming back to stop these, factions. The faction of Cathara's faction, like with Magoth and Bazaar, and the possessed Reverend Crow, and then the Blood faction. And finally, they kind of have a truce of sorts with the Blood, I guess, for now. Damon's goal, above all else, is to make sure Gabriella, who he is in love with and is carrying his baby, is okay. And he goes to see her in the hospital, and her experience has totally changed her. She no longer believes. She no longer has hope. She says, Damon, I kept crying for you, and you never answered. And I mean, she knows it's not his fault, but still, she thought maybe with, I guess, her holiness and her great love and things that were still inside him dormant under Bazaar, that they would have a connection. I mean, and he wants her to raise their child, and she wants nothing to do with it. She says it's a monster that needs to be destroyed. And it's really tragic. It's pretty much a bummer. What happens to Gabrielle in the last two episodes, it's almost as depressing as what happened to Hank in Titans this season. It's just, this character finally comes into her own, and there's this romance blossoming, and then they get kind of fucked over, and she gets captured and tortured. Daimon can't save her. God can't save her, as one of the demons tells her, and she does the best she can to be strong, but she has limitations. But now she's free, and she's gonna be strong, and her strength is this dark, embittered, jaded cynicism that she's acquired due to this horrendous set of circumstances that have caused her to give birth to this demon incarnate, which fucked her life up, stole her life. And so most of the characters convene. Louise has been injured in one of the fights, but she's getting better. And they cut out some of her cancer. Her and Henry are friendly, and Satana has mellowed quite a bit. She's still Satana, but her and Daimon are getting along, and there is kind of like a family vibe here, like a reunion. And Victoria, of course, is coming more and more to her senses and happy to be human again and with her kids, and that Satana's forgiven her. And apparently Daimon and them are going to raise the baby. Well, while they're having a celebratory party, the baby's stolen. And then 2 months later, we see Chris Yin taking this little girl for a walk, and not sure what was up at first. And then this man approaches them, and it's played by Mitch Pileggi, who was Skinner on X-Files. And he has like the whole Church of Satan look going on. He's got a shaven head and a mustache and goatee. Not as long as mine, but very sinister, very distinguished. And a black trench coat and black clothes and a big ominous looking ring. And he starts to talk to the little girl, and he says, "What is your name?" And she says, "Cathara." And so then you know that not only did the kid's pregnancy move at accelerated speed, the kid's aging is moving at accelerating speed. In a month, she looks about 7, 6, 7. And she seems to recognize this man. And he says, "Well, you had another name. Do you remember your other name?" And she racks her little brain and says, "Lily?" He's like, "Yes, Lily." And subsequently, it's not stated in the episode, I've subsequently read that Lily is short for Lilith. And she calls him Papa. And he says she's coming with him. And Christian defies him. And he says, "You can't touch me." And this guy seems to know, indeed, he can't touch Chris, harm him. So instead, he just kind of looks around a little bit, and effortlessly the crowd starts to part like the Red Sea, and humans drop like flies around and behind him. And then he turns with the little girl and walks through the clearing path where all the bodies are, strewn about, and Chris Yin is like kind of in a state of fucking shock. And as he's walking away, he tells the little girl, "Now it's time for you to meet your brother and sister." So, yeah. What are the obvious conclusions and what are the speculations? The obvious conclusions are that this being, is the super powerful demon, and he is the father of Lilith, who might be the legendary Lilith / Cathara. So even though Mother was driving all the hijinks the whole time, all of the intrigue, this hand was still there behind it somewhere, waiting for this moment. Because they thought, Daimon and Anna thought their father had come back at one point and was after them, but actually it was just the machinations of Mother. So now you see this guy being, behind Mother, and she really doesn't have much memories of her evil past life, and Chris is trying to make sure she doesn't, and that she could possibly be a whole being, despite Cathara's spirit in her. This guy's got other plans. Then when he says your brother and sister, almost certainly he means Daimon and Satana. So he's the father of Cathara and Daimon and Satana. Of course, Cathara is many, many millennia older than them, but she's their half sister. These satanic family trees, man. Who is this character? This isn't answered in the show any more than the Lily equals Lilith was, but it has been confirmed as canon and on various official websites. So the character's name is Marduk Hellstrom. He is the father of Daimon and Satana and Cathara / Lilith. And, you know, Marduk. So in the comic books, Satan's real name that Daimon finds out and kind of defeats him with was Marduk Kurios. And of course, the father was Mr. Hellstrom. I don't think all those years they ever gave his first name. So they've conflated some things. Marduk Hellstrom is the name he's using to walk among humans. Marduk could be his real demon name. Who knows? Satan could be his real demon name. But he ain't no mysterious roaming serial killer. We see really but I think it's clear that he is the character they've been afraid of the whole series, and the character who sired them. So it's quite an ending and quite a cliffhanger. I can only imagine what season 2 might be, but I'm not going to try to imagine. This is gone. It's dead. The plug is pulled. Marvel Television is no more, and they're distancing themselves from the adult material. But you know what? At least we got one season of what I consider very strong television and a very, very good adaptation of the source material. I mean, they kind of beat around the bush a bit about some of it, and I get that to an extent. But it delivers in the end. I mean, the clarity is there, the concepts are there, the characters and the relationships are there, and their personalities are there. I mean, Satana is much more evil than Daimon in the series. And Satana's look is very evocative of her 2000s look, where she wears more like kind of tight leather, more gothy look, and usually like tight burgundy leather, but in this is, it's mostly black, but and she just kind of has that attitude. And Sidney Lemon pulls it off. The actress is incredible in it. Tom Austin is Daimon. Daimon doesn't have orange or red hair, but he does have short hair that's got some spikes here and there. So you can kind of make a slight mental leap to when he had the shorter orange hair with the little horns. He does have a beard, close cropped. Didn't bother me because, a lot of Satanists wear beards and goatees. He wears all black and a trench coat. He has the thing on, the mark. But not only that, he needs to use his father's knives to defeat Mother's plans, and one is the edge that marked him, and the other one was found in the house, and but they're not working, so they have to be fused together. And Chris Yin, in his new state as a keeper, somehow instinctively knows the ritual, and they forge them together. I believe Satana uses it with her powers. And so this blade, Daimon ends up causing unholy hell with it, because not only, they're not just stabbing people with this blade. The blade extends, this flame extends from the top and bottom of it. And it's kind of like a long staff. And as Daimon is using it for his coup de grace, 3 spokes come out the front. And it looks just like his Hellfire Trident, which was in the comics his father, and it was made of netheranium, a steel made in hell. So all the elements are there, whether they're blatant in your face or subtle smooth. This show is widely hated. It's a slow-paced show. It's not an action show. It does have the tonalities of a soap opera in the sense that there's a lot of drawing room scenes, emotional confrontations. There is glib humor and cattiness here and there, and some actual wit. There's also a good bit of erudite conversation between some of the characters, especially Damon and Henry, who are obviously and Satana too. They're obviously very learned characters. They have great vocabularies. They start talking about philosophy in one of the last episodes, and of course they talk all through about all these different theories about these demons and what they do and how they possess you and what they want, and the possession scenes are cool. I don't know, man. I mean, I got more out of this series than the 2 seasons of the Exorcist TV series, which I thought was just completely missed the mark. I liked Gina Davis's casting as the adult Regan McNeil, but that's about it. But the things they were reaching for in that, the torment and stuff of the gay priest and that, I think near the end Gabrielle manifested. It's not quite as angst-ridden and over the top and predictable, and it's not as predictable as the Gabriel in the comics, who was kind of similar to that Exorcist character, drunken and angst-ridden and crying out to God. So she's not like that. She internalizes this, and the most startling twist in the end to me, which I forgot to mention, was that she joins the blood, and now she's a devil hunter, a demon hunter, and wears the long trench coat, just like Gabriel. I don't know if she's going to carry a Bible around like he did. If she doesn't have an eye patch. But it made sense in our character transformation. She did go from a nun, disillusioned, falling from grace, becoming a demon hunter, and angry and powerful. Hopefully, will be powerful. And so the arc of Gabriel as the priest and all this other stuff, yeah. And the lost love of Gabriel was his first wife, Andrea, and then his lover, Desadia, whereas Gabriella lost Daimon right when she had him. And she's bound to him now through that child, but you can tell he's hurt, really hurt. And it shows that vulnerability that I saw in that character in those Defenders comic books. So that's the end. This is a massive undertaking, but I've tried to be as thorough as possible. I know I've been way too thorough, but I've also tried to take my time and explain every detail and not get too far off into crazy tangents and make my points. And I feel pretty mellow and confident that I've done so. You may not agree, so help me out here if you will. My regular subscribers, please like this. I can't get more than 10 likes on any of my videos, and I know more people than that watch them. Maybe the others hate them. I don't know. Why do they watch them? Please share this on social media if you like it to an appropriate venue. When I'm at a Facebook jail, I'll be sharing it like crazy. Also, read my stuff down at the bottom. See if you want to be a channel patron of some sort or donate to help my whole operation keep going, which basically means, clearing the way of everything that's getting in the way of me doing creative stuff full time. And since my house repairs have not been addressed yet, I'm basically just paying bills and working my way out of debt and trying to get something worked out with that. And then I'll be funneling time and energy not only into this, but into Flickr Street and other projects. So what else? Thanks to Tim Tolbert for being permanent channel patron, and thanks to my friends who've been very supportive of me lately. I'd like to thank Kimberly Jones. I'd like to thank Nicola Nazarino, Sean Lee Levin, Tim Tolbert, Tim McLean, Mick Cantone, Sarana Anwin. Those are some of the big ones. Who did I forget? Stephen Levin. Yeah, I'm gonna forget somebody, and they're gonna be upset and hurt. I'm sorry, but anyway, those are off the top of my head. But thanks to all you guys, and we got a couple of new subscribers this week. Some cats I bumped into at my work that were interested. The political videos are not going to be happening here. Yeah, I've done like 3 here. So I've signed up for Rockfin, and I'm going to do a political commentary video series. And I'm very excited. I'll be in the August company of some of my favorite journalists and commentators. I wouldn't call what I'm going to be doing journalism, but it is commentating, and it is trying to make sense of the mess we're in, maybe brainstorming some solutions or something positive to add to the problems, and denouncing the things that need to be denounced and stopped so that we can implement positive social change and save the world. My ex Kelly was like, we're going to save the world. And I believed it. I did. But she's doing her thing and I'm doing mine. And so, Seas la vida. Thank you for watching. And more appropriately than ever, I'm going to leave you with, as Merciful Fate plays in the background, Melissa, the Devil's Horns. And thanks for watching.